Welcome back to The Afterword, a conversation about the future of words. We are so glad to have Patty Murphy and Matt Carter here with us. We are talking about the background stories around real estate and how we may be able to add real estate assets to our financial portfolios. During the pandemic, about 1 in 5 Americans changed their residence. That's according to Pew Research. 7 out of 10 people worked from home at some point during the pandemic, which may have contributed to a volatile real estate market. Are you seeing shifts in real estate as a result of the pandemic? Or what are some of the trends you would like to see continue, and what are some that you're glad to see the back end of?
Well, with regard to changing, the market itself is changing with interest rates going up. The frenzy that we experienced for 2 years due to low inventory, very low interest rates, and just everyone making that change that you had mentioned. We also had a survey that it was tremendously high percentage, 40 to 50% of people that were selling were moving over 100 miles away. So really changing the demographic of a lot of areas, New York, for instance, and places that are very, very much changing, people coming south, people moving west. So that not only were there those changes, but just the volatility, like you had mentioned, that has calmed down. I don't say cooled, I'd say calmed, particularly on the East Coast. Some things that I am glad to see have gone away with regard to that is people buying way over list price, way over appraisal, making up the difference in cash, really buying above what they should, waiving contingencies such as home inspections and appraisals, and just the rush to decide. I'm very glad we're through with that. It's just waiving those things. I as a buyer's agent did not allow my clients to waive their home inspections. If they wanted to do that so much that they wanted another house, I wouldn't represent them. But I never had that happen because we had some serious conversations. That's not happening now. Home inspections have come back, closing costs have come back, contingencies are not being waived. So it's a better place for the industry to be and for our consumers to be purchasing.
Do you think that now, you mentioned this in the first episode a little bit, that people are starting to stay maybe within their means or below their means a little bit more than you saw prior to?
Yes, definitely. And buyers now have a better, more level playing field. You know, there's not 20 offers on one house and there's not all these escalations. It's because of the interest rate, which is still historically low, I might add. The interest rate, people were just so enamored with 2 and 3%, obviously. Now it's 5, tops of 5. Now it's like we're afraid to buy, but there's still some wonderful opportunities out there.
Okay, good word. How about you, Matt?
Yeah, Amy, thank you. Holland, thanks for having us back. Patty, it's nice to be with you again. I hope everybody was listening to what she said, because that residential market, that volatility, the unhealthy side of that, I think has changed a little bit. And people made some awful decisions, in my opinion, about on the residential side, operating outside of their means. On the commercial side, in our region, the pandemic was extremely tough on restaurants, hotels, a few other market segments. But at the same time, we've been open for business completely long enough now to adjust and change. Other markets, other areas still have it rough, depending on their political climate. Politics in general can be divisive. Nobody knows that, I guess. But so sometimes decisions are made out of political loyalty, which don't necessarily have anything to do with evolving with a situation. In real estate and business in general, a big pool of owners, and we call it the market, but they make lots of micro decisions and adjustments as the market evolves. Governments tend to make sweeping legislation, which may or may not allow the normal market, to operate. It artificially interferes with that. We were fortunate in our area to begin quickly relying on what consumers and business owners felt was right for themselves and their families. So in my opinion, we're back to a much more normal marketplace, and I certainly hope that continues.
Okay. Excellent. Wonderful. Well, it is interesting. And Patty, I'm really glad you brought up the idea that 5% isn't unheard of. It's not that huge of a interest rate. Because there are no crystal balls to financial markets. And many of our listeners, and I know you all can probably identify with the real estate crash in 2008. I mean, that was a huge tailspin. So how can we be responsible? And you alluded to it a little bit too, Matt. How can we be responsible with our investments in real estate and learn from some of the lessons in the past? Maybe, some of the even recent past. Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, well, like I was trying to say, I guess we all need to remember that if the federal government gets involved, all bets are off, right? No matter how well a market is doing, when the government artificially interferes with a normal economic force like supply and demand, then we're all going to be affected drastically for good or bad. The market left alone is amazing for being able to make those minor adjustments automatically. So it's more predictable as a whole. The government, its influence is rarely predictable. Buy things within your means. Hold your real estate forever, or use things like 1031 tax exchange to trade from one piece of property into something else, so you don't have to pay the capital gains tax, or let your kids inherit it and get the benefit of that stepped up basis and avoid those taxes. But if you buy things based on, the rent that you might get, but also that value per square foot in a way that you can afford, then really you've learned from 2008. 2008 was because a lot of people did stuff as part of a government program that really didn't work out well in the marketplace when the government didn't step up and pay everybody off. And it affected the whole economy. Just don't buy things based on what today's snapshot looks like. Remember what you can actually afford. And I think 2008 will have taught us the lesson.
Excellent. Patty, can you continue on that conversation?
I agree with everything Matt said, and was almost exactly what was in my notes. One thing I want to tell to a lot of people ask me, are we going to have a bubble now? Is it going to be the same? It's a totally different market now than it was back then because of what Matt alluded to. People that were qualifying for mortgages that they could not afford, that they shouldn't have even qualified for in the beginning, and all those foreclosures that came about. The investors that invested on those loans lost out. So we all lost out. That's not happening now. Legislation and lender legislation has tightened exponentially. So that kind of lending is no longer happening. The market inventory is low. So there's still the supply. It's a totally different market. So what people saw in 2008 is not the same. The people freaking out about paying too much a couple years ago and things like that. As Matt said, hold on to it. It's going to be okay. The market's not going to drop. Your value of your home is not going to drop like it did and have all the short sales and things that we did back in that time frame. So just be smart. Don't overextend yourself, and just do what you're supposed to do with regard to your maintaining your home as well. We talked about being, responsible for our investments. Again, it's maintaining that investment and taking care of it so that it stays lively and stays of market value and things like that. So.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And Matt, you were telling me that you all did quite a bit of work in your commercial building. I always think about that, when you said you have to buy your own dishwasher if it's your home, right? Well, that's return on investment. So if I'm putting that into my investment, I'm going to expect the return when I sell it, not that a dishwasher is going to get me $1 million, but if I have an appliance and it's not working and that's part of the house, then that's going to decrease my investment. So if I'm hearing you say, that's one of the lessons too, is maintain what you've invested in.
Correct.
Amy, real quick, if you don't mind too.
Yeah, good. Jump in.
The idea, quality of life matters, right? So people can spend money on their quality of life. They might travel or eat out or do other things, but those aren't investments. And so a lot of folks, myself potentially included, we all have the propensity sometimes to want to build a testimony to ourselves. And that's not an investment. The office building you talked about, we got an old warehouse and we made it an office, and we love it. It's got a nice feel to it. We love being where we are, but we didn't come in and do a multi-million-dollar plan just so from all appearances, we look like we're made of money. And it's what we always had in mind. We took a building and we maximized it for what it was. And we did that reasonably and made reasonable improvements. A lot of people, a lot of businesses, a lot of individuals, they want something that looks a certain way, and they'll pay any amount of money to get it, even though the next person is never going to see it their way. That's where a lot of money gets lost.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So I've got kind of a funny story. This person that I knew was selling their house, and it's just like that. You're right. It's a testimony to themselves. They would not show their house. They didn't want anybody in their house. So they painted the entire thing. Well, the person who bought the house after them, first of all, knocked out half the walls and repainted. So it was so funny, right? You know, I mean, your taste is in your mouth, but I love what you're talking about as far as being responsible, because that's what you're talking about, Matt, that this was a responsible renovation, not necessarily to put, Joyner commercial real estate on the market. It already is on the market. You're taking something that's established as a historical building and being responsible with it. Patty, I love how you're saying, you've got to invest in your investment. What's the word that you guys, that realtors often use, curb appeal? Do they use that anymore?
Yeah, they do.
Okay.
This is probably, it's too late really for me to ask this question, because I put my house on the market. I'm putting my house on the market with a realtor. I didn't even consider the remote possibility of for sale by owner. Did I do right? I mean, what are some of the benefits of having a realtor, whether it's commercial or a residential deal? And maybe what are some of the benefits of attempting to DIY it?
What's interesting is people think when they sell their homes or for sale by owners on their own, they're going to make more money and put more money in their pocket. The fact of the matter is, on average, when you decide to be a DIY seller, you're losing on average 26% of what you would have sold, and you're trying to save 5 or 6% by a commission. But on average, it's 26% you lose out on by not using an experienced realtor to get you the right price, negotiate for you, and get you to the table. But it's 26%. And that number doesn't change very much since I've been doing this. So it's remarkable. So saving, 5 or 6% versus 26%.
Okay, my jaw is dropping. Those of our listeners on the podcast cannot see it, but I am in awe. That is a huge, huge loss.
And there's so many other pitfalls in just going through the process. Like we both have said, we learn every day. And what we're learning is to help our clients better and have by all these stories, learning from other agents, our own experiences, what the pitfalls are so that we don't do that. It's a journey. The whole thing's a journey. And if you think that you can have that, all that knowledge for that one sale, it can be scary.
Yeah. Have you had that situation where somebody's done the do it yourself and then they said, Patty?
No, I have not. I kind of, I've had one experience where I spoke to a for sale by owner way back in the beginning, and it was enough to taint me for not ever doing it again. Okay. I have had a situation where friends said, we're thinking about doing it ourselves. Sell me on why you should sell it for us. But that was even before they got started. And I actually got the listing. So I guess I did all right.
Well, I mean, you dropped that kind of statistic. That's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about you, Matt? Why do I need a commercial real estate director?
Okay. I would say I've been doing this 25 years, right? You know that professionally, 25 years. When I'm in commercial real estate. I'm not on the home side, but when I buy or sell my own home, I use a residential realtor. Okay. So that should tell you something. When I buy or I sell my own commercial properties, I discuss issues with other commercial professionals in my office, not just myself. I don't rely solely on my own knowledge. I'm a CCIM. I know that doesn't mean a lot to everyone, but it means I have the best real estate education that's available. I'm an SIOR, meaning I can prove that I've been successful in my business financially. I've done well, and I've been doing it 25 years. And if I still lean on professionals, I feel like then I should encourage everyone else to do the same thing.
Yeah, I love that. That's, and it's very interesting to me. I don't care what field you're in, education, medicine, real estate. If you are your island, you've missed out on that collaboration. So that's what I'm hearing from both of you, that if I'm doing it myself, I don't have anybody to collaborate with.
Right. And that's the big word, is collaboration, for sure.
Yeah. But if I have a professional realtor, then I'm getting their network of collaboration. And that's a huge win. All right. So, Matt, you talked about this a little bit, and I would like us to unpack it a bit more and get some details. Okay. So if I wanted to get into investment real estate, whether it was a rental home or a storefront, whatever it was, what would you recommend as some first safe steps? Because this episode is rounding out our theme of money. And we've been talking a lot on our show about investing and investments, but this one is about investing in real estate. So what would be a good first step, Matt?
Yeah, I would say become immersed in the values in your own marketplace. Get with a professional, not merely a licensee, but someone who knows what they're doing. We talked about concepts like buying something you can afford, or if you have a 20-year view, it doesn't really matter what you're going to buy as long as you can afford to pay for it now, or if it goes vacant. But when someone contacts me and they say, how do I do this? What do I do? Generally, I embark upon a learning curve. Maybe that is discussing goals. Certainly that's a part of it. But once I know about what they're thinking, then a lot of the time it's just to send them an amount of material, what's available, like what they're describing, so that we can go through the various commercial real estate terms with specific properties that they can kind of go drive by. They could go discuss in reality and not just hypothetically. What does triple net mean? What are pass-through expenses? What's a CAM charge? How does this work? What am I legally allowed to do in a lease or not allowed to do in a lease? And so that learning curve is a lot. There are plenty of people that kind of sit and talk about things. You've got to actually go and become immersed in those marketplace values, so that then you might be able to see, hey, this could be a good buy, or this is a decent time to sell, or I was just offered more for this than I ever thought I would be. But if you don't know anything about the values at all, if you haven't had anyone help you with that, then it really becomes a tough process.
Okay. So let me ask you this. I want to follow up on this, Matt. What about risk? I mean, this is the first time I'm going to buy this commercial real estate. What are some of my risks that I need to know about?
Are you going to use a mortgage or not?
Probably. I'm probably not yet ready to have cash in hand.
Okay, good. Are you going to occupy it with your business, or are you just buying it strictly as an investment?
I'm going to buy it as an investment.
Okay, perfect. So the chances are the bank's going to require at least 20% down. Okay. I would say that's good. That's healthy, that at least you're putting up 20%. You'd probably be better off to put up 30, 40, or 50%. But if you can afford that mortgage payment based on a vacant building for a long period of time, a commercial building can sit vacant, more vacant than a residential structure. In my belief, my brother makes a joke. He says, I can have a rental home, and if I lower the rent by $75 a month, I can steal a tenant from somewhere else in the neighborhood. But if I have a commercial building, I might reduce it to almost zero, and still, if nobody can use it for their business, they're not going to lease from me just because it's a good deal. Does that make sense?
Oh, so totally.
When I come back to this idea of being able to afford it, if your other job allows you to pay for some amount of carrying cost vacancy for 6 months to a year, if you really weren't able to lease it, and it could take 6 months to a year, it could take longer, then that's probably being responsible. You're going to need to pay your taxes at the same time, your real estate insurance. The tenant that comes to your table may say, hey, I'd like to lease it, but I don't have much money and I need a lot of stuff done to that building to use it. Then you have to wonder, well, are they a good risk? Can they afford what they're saying they can pay in in rent. And so then you ask for their financial statements, much like a bank, and you ask them to sign personal guarantees, and you decide if they can help you with that. But that a lot of times, especially for beginners, comes after you already own the building. If you find something that's already leased in today's market, you probably have to pay so much for that investment per square foot that if they vacate, that may not be a good investment anymore. And a lot of people will buy, let's say a Starbucks. I don't want to pick on them. I love Starbucks, but $1,000 a square foot for a Starbucks, they'll sign a 10-year lease, 20-year lease. But if they go vacant, that building may only be worth $100 a square foot for somebody that's going to have an ice cream shop in there that just started last year. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So buying it off of the stock price on a cap rate can be really, really risky. It's better to buy something you can afford if it's vacant.
Okay. Great example. Thank you so much. I'm not ready to buy an investment property in commercial yet, but
I'll help you.
I know where to go. I know where to go.
Right.
Patty, what can we do to help us with, getting our feet into the toe into the water?
From a residential standpoint, for first steps, I too recommend at least 20% down and start small. 3 bedrooms, definitely. 2 baths, definitely. That's generally the standard for rentals. If you're going to use it as a rental property, also get a real lease. Make sure it's a legitimate lease, not something you're making up or putting on a napkin. Make sure you've got a legitimate lease, and make sure you've checked your tenant's credit score, all their financials. I would not recommend renting to somebody's friend just because you know them. Make sure you have all their credential information that you need to make the right decision. And I suggest initially anyway, particularly for somebody that's doing it for the first time, use a property management company to kind of just see how it goes so that you get it for those first steps. So you understand the process. You've got kind of another expert looking out for you, and do it that way. And then when you get more comfortable with it, you can cut ties with them and move and do it on your own. And then, use the proceeds that you're making from them and potentially buy your next, take that next step. But I always suggest at least 20% down in a 3 and a 2. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. But I really recommend using a property management company initially.
That's so smart. That is so smart, because there's so many things that you don't know if you've never done this before.
Yep.
Okay. Excellent. Oh, this is so good. Now, I'm not ready to move on either of these suggestions, and I'm not sure if Holland would either. But we appreciate the information, because this is what I love hearing these stories. You have the experience, you've got the background, and you're just giving a little taste of what we could do if we decide to move forward with that.
Finally, and this is our last and favorite question, what's a metaphor to help us understand real estate?
Mine's living the dream.
Nice.
Both from my side of the fence and from my client's side of the fence.
Awesome.
I'm terrible at this, but I think in similes instead of metaphors. And there's a lot of sayings out there about real estate, right? A bird in hand is better than 2 in the bush. When you're talking about investments, a short nickel is better than a long dime. Everybody's heard location. There's hundreds of these things. My favorite comparisons actually come out of Ecclesiastes, which is strange, but one of them is that time and chance affect us all, right? That's certainly in investment real estate. But one I like even more is that a live dog is better than a dead lion. For where there is life, there is hope. Our South Carolina license plate actually comes from that, a little bit, a version of that. You're still alive, then you can still improve. You can still do better. Is a deal still alive? Then it may work out. Every good broker has to think that way somewhat. You have to actually have real estate or have a contract to actually benefit from it. Meaning thinking about it, talking about it, discussing it doesn't do anything. If you're taking actual steps forward, then you have hope. 20 years goes by really quickly. If you buy something today and hold on to it, real estate lasts forever. You'll be fine.
Wow. You both packed a lot into that metaphor question. That was perfect. Thank you so much.
Those are great metaphors. Thank you so much. Patty, where can folks learn more about your work or connect with you or maybe buy a house through you?
You can find me on social media, Patty Murphy Homes, on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And my website is Patty Murphy Homes as well. I'd love to hear from you.
Matt, how can listeners connect with you and learn more about what you're doing? Maybe get some office space through you.
Yeah, great. You can go to greenvillebroker.com, Greenville like our city, greenvillebroker.com. All my contact information is there. Send me an email if you want to follow me. Or really, I do most of that through the company at Joyner CRE, Facebook, and otherwise. Find me on LinkedIn, of course, and just search Matt Carter, Greenville, South Carolina. I'll turn up.
Thank you both, and I look forward to getting to know you a little bit better. Join us next week as we begin a new theme. We're going to be talking about human ingenuity, and we're starting with the topic, creating tidy lifestyles. What do we need to know about tidiness? We're going to be talking about the myths and the stories and the words around living tidily.
So those of you who are joining us with your reviews, we thank you. You're a subscriber. We appreciate that. Please, if you haven't, go to theafterwordpodcast.com. It does help us keep the conversations going. And as always, you are welcome at our table.